So today I'll be talking about bridging the digital gap for women and girls in Africa. My name is Fadzayi Chiwandire. I'm on Twitter under the handle Fadzayi. I work for 1.4 Consulting as a front-end developer. And I founded the Diva initiative where we teach young girls how to code from as early as 8 years old. So I know my name can be a bit complicated on the tongue, so you can just call me Fa, it's fine. Okay, so the digital gap, just a bit of a description, just a definition. It's the uneven distribution in the access to use or impact of information and communication technologies between a number of distinct groups. For example, the gender gap, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So now that we know what the gender digital gap is, how do we bridge it? So I identified, in my opinion, 6 steps that we can achieve this. There could be more, there could be less, maybe if you want to take some of them out, but I think there'll be 6 steps. The 6 steps would be balance, incubate, reward, collaborate, list statistics, and I'll explain that later, and men, including men in the process of bridging the gap. Balance. There's a gap between what African women can achieve and what they end up achieving. And this is because when we, as African women, when we grow up, we tend to be put in a box. I'll give you an example. In 2000, when I started high school, I started Form 1, I went to a boarding school. I think Form 1 is the equivalent to your grade 8, if I'm not mistaken. We were mandated to pick one, what do they call it, one subject to do handwork, okay? So it was fashion and fabrics, food and nutrition, metalwork, and woodwork. I knew what food and nutrition was, I knew what fashion and fabrics was, and I knew what woodwork was, and I didn't know what metalwork was. So I was so interested in knowing what, are we going to be making metal benches, or what are we going to be making? So I went and I joined that queue to register in the metalwork class. And immediately I noticed that my peers, other girls had gone to the food and nutrition and the fashion and fabrics, but I didn't care because I was really interested. But what struck me the most was the teachers that were around me looked at me funny. You know, I think most of us here, we've got mothers. You know, our mothers, African mothers, they don't say much. If they don't agree with what you're saying, they just look at you. You know, and immediately you know there's something wrong, right? So that's what happened. They were looking at me and I was wondering, okay, I think maybe I'm not supposed to be here, but I can't go anywhere else because all the other classes are full. So I got to the front of the line to register, and the teacher blatantly asked me, are you sure? Because girls don't usually take this class. I was like, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, even if I wanted to go to another class, I can't because it's full. So I registered. And it was at this very moment that I realized that my gender comes with restrictions. It was at this moment that I became aware of my gender, I'm a girl, not physically, but the restrictions that come with being a girl, the restrictions that come with, the rules that come with being female. This is the moment that I learned, you can't just sit like this, you have to sit like a lady and act like a lady. So we need to get rid of boxes. Because tech is perceived as a boys thing. And the problem this poses is that ladies, girls, they tend to think that, well, then tech is not for everyone. And that's not the message that we're putting out there. So the message we are putting out there in the public and what we then practice when we are bringing up our girls is different. Girls also need to see more role models. When I started teaching girls about a year ago, there were 2 girls. The first girl asked me, so what do you do when you code? Is that a job? They were not aware of what kind of a job you can do when you start coding, right? But the boys knew. I have like just 2 boys who come to my class, I couldn't really dismiss them. They knew exactly what it was. And some of them had played around with some code and they knew exactly what it was. The other incident was when I had like a laptop that I had with me when I had my event to register my students. One of the boys told the one girl that, oh, but you're a girl. She had gone to touch the laptop and he was like, oh, but you are a girl. So this is how we are raising in society. This is how some children are being raised, that computers and anything techie is only done by boys. The problem that poses is they are going to be very afraid to get into the tech space. Okay. Incubate. Sorry guys, I just need to check if my screen is recording. My phone is recording. Okay, there we go. Safe spaces. Based on some of the conversations I've had with women in organizations, in corporate, and many other organizations, they don't know what to do with their innovative ideas. So they do have like this bright spark idea that they have, but they don't know how to handle it. They don't know if they should go to the powers that be and tell them like, I've got this really cool idea. I don't know how to handle it. I don't know what the process is to get it incubated. The other scenario is that they know exactly how to get it incubated. There are a lot of organizations that have got these innovative hubs, incubator programs and all that. But the problem that I have heard so far is we go with our ideas, they win this innovation hub thing, and immediately they plug in a male to lead the innovation idea. So they tend to then just take a backseat because it just comes across as though if I go to the powers that be with my idea, they're just going to plug in another guy to take over and then I'm forced to take the back seat. Funding and support. It has been recorded statistically that 2% out of the 18% of women that get funded in their startups are African women. And that's a problem because that means that 98% of the people who are going to seek funding from VCs and accelerator programs are male. And it's obvious that the more people who are going to, like if there are more men that are going to be asking for funding in their projects, they're probably going to be funding more, the VCs and the accelerator programs are going to be funding more men instead of women. So we need to have more women that are going to be at all levels of startups. Reward. I recently watched, well not recently, sometime last year, I watched this movie called Hidden Figures. I don't know if anyone has watched it. Katherine Johnson. Katherine Johnson, I think it was back in the 60s, 70s. She was known what was known as a human computer. So her role that she played in history was coming up with complex calculations, especially those that had to do with astronomy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm correct. And she also pioneered the use of computers in the astronomy space. But you will find that she contributed a lot to a lot of papers that had an impact to whatever it is that was being pioneered at that time. But she was never headlined. She was always at the footnote. And what happens to footnotes? No one reads them. So it always came across as her male counterparts were the ones who actually came up with the ideas and who actually like did the whole work, all the work, when she was actually the one who put in most of the work. And this is still happening with a lot of women to date, that in workspaces, they come up with ideas, they come up with workable solutions, and it's always passed down to the next male, and he's the one who is rewarded. And we are forced to dim our light where we are supposed to headline. And we need help in that. In our workspaces, we need help in whoever that is leading the team of developers, of the tech team to be cognizant of the fact that there are women who are just as equally intelligent, who come up with ideas and keep track of who is actually coming up with these ideas, who is coming up with the workable solutions, and you reward them and you give them credit for the work that they have done. Okay, so halfway done. I don't know if anyone has got questions at this point. Okay. Collaborate. So I see there are a lot of initiatives going around, popping up like mushrooms, right? I've got an initiative that teaches young girls how to code. There's another initiative that teaches like teenagers how to code, similar to what I'm doing, not exactly the same, but we could be working together, but we actually don't. There are just too many of us working in silos. Way too many of us working in silos. We're doing great work. I know I'm doing amazing work. Everyone else is doing something similar or even better, is doing amazing work. But we are working against ourselves if we do not collaborate and work together. So policies and getting funding for our initiatives and whatever goal that we are trying to achieve would be so much easier if we move in numbers. I recently read an article about Girls Who Code. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Girls Who Code. It's a United States initiative. They recently sat in front of Congress to push for tech to be included in the curriculum, something like that. And they were moving in numbers, right? They included a lot of other women in their agenda, and they went and they sat in front of the Congress. I'm not sure what the result was, but my point is, imagine if we wanted to pass certain policies that work in the benefit of women and girls in tech. Instead of just one individual organization approaching the policymakers and grouping maybe 10, 20 organizations that are doing the same thing, it will have more impact than just having one organization vying for the same goal. Funding as well. If, for instance, one organization, let's say 3 organizations, go to a corporate to look for funding, okay? But separately, this organization needs 100,000, that organization needs 100,000, and the third one needs 100,000. And then the second scenario is if they come together under one organization and still go and ask for 300,000 from that organization. The organization is more likely going to fund the grouped organization that is under one umbrella. And in the other scenario, they're probably only going to fund one organization. It's still the same amount of money. But what happens when you're moving in numbers is you are communicating credibility, accountability, and governance. And also you're communicating the fact that you are building something that is bigger than your own individual organizations. Too many stats. So I think I dropped a bit of a stat there somewhere when I say 2% of the 18%. But I really hate stats, especially the negative stats, because we keep bombarding girls and women who are trying to get into the tech space with every single negative statistic and odd that is tagged against them. It's like we are creating a scenario from the Hunger Games, right? Like if you get into the tech world, you're going to be swallowed. And I don't think that's how it works. I've heard my fair share of challenges when I'm working in the tech space. I've been in the tech space for more than 10 years, but it really is not like that. And those statistics, what they have contributed to is girls dropping out of tech studies in university, women dropping out of tech work when they get into the workspace, dropping out of like choosing another career path. And it works against what we're trying to achieve to get women into tech and retaining the numbers of women that we have in tech already. So we need to showcase more stories of women that have made it in the industry to change the narrative. The last bit is men matter. So I'm really happy like there are men that have come, because I was actually worried that since the Women Take Makers event, I'm only going to be speaking to women. So I'm really happy there are men that have come through to the talk. Men matters. There is no way we are going to achieve gender balance and close this gap if we do not include men, because that's actually where the balance is. But what we need to address is a few points. Privilege. Guys, you need to understand what privilege is and accept that you have it. So if we can just define privilege, privilege is just that advantage that you have over another group. And it's not your fault at all. It is not your fault. It does not take away or nullify any of the hard work that you have done to get to where you are. All it means is in a race, you have just had a head start compared to the other runners that you have, that you're running against. So we just need you guys to understand that you are privileged in that sense that you were born male. There are so many other faces to inequality than just gender. So for instance, I always say that I'm fighting 3 biases. I'm a Black Zimbabwean woman. Those are 3 biases already. I have to battle this on a daily. I have to battle this on a daily. A white female, she is still battling the bias of being female. An Indian woman who wears her hijab when she is coding, she is still battling She is still battling that bias that she is Indian and the way Indians are perceived. Muslims, to be specific, right? Because not all of them wear hijabs. Muslim, to be specific. A female who is lesbian is also battling that bias that she is lesbian. So my challenges when it comes to inequality and gender gap, they might not be the same right across the board where females are concerned. They are different, and we need to stay cognizant of that. Parental leave. I once worked at one organization, and I had my first child. I decided not to take maternity leave, not because I was afraid to lose my job. It was just a remuneration issue that I had. So I decided that I would only work from home for the first month of me being a mother, but I was still working full 8 hours in a day. I just wasn't going to the office, and I would start going to the office in the second month. But what happened was when I got back to the office in that second month, someone had taken my job. They had pretty much replaced me. They just couldn't fire me because of labor laws, but I had been replaced. So instead of sitting at my desk and coding, I was found doing Google reports every single day until I was frustrated. And my point with parental leave is, if more men in workplaces insist on taking parental leave, it takes away the stigma that when you hire a woman, she is going to, at some point, take 3 months leave, and you're going to be left in a position where you are understaffed. Because if they also take paternal leave, it's going to be like, well, it's not only women who are taking maternity leave. They're also taking paternity leave, right? So it's just that stigma that we need to take away. Mentor and sponsorship. In as much as it is important for girls to see women in spaces that they're trying to tap into, it is also important for young girls to see men who treat women in that space right, and who also are vying for women to make it in that space. So if you are a guy who's working in tech and you identify a young girl who's got potential to make it, mentor her. If you are financially equipped, you can sponsor her. I personally had that experience when I started working at my current job, which is not really my current job. It's complicated, but at my current job, I will explain. There was some rebranding and then some branching out that happened. But about 9 years ago, when I started working at this company, I started off as a web designer. I was only designing. And then I took a shot at a WordPress site, but it was custom. So I had to do a bit of PHP in there. And the guy who was leading the dev team at the time identified that I had potential to know how to code, right? So he went to our boss, like the owner of the company, and he said, I would like to take her on my team because she has actually done this great job. So from then on, he mentored me, and he taught me C++, and he taught me Delphi, and he taught me PHP, and he taught me JavaScript. And that's the kind of mentorship that I'm talking about. Like, you identify potential, run with it. Be mindful of harassment. So insist on policies of zero tolerance for harassment in workplaces. I don't want to offend anyone, but sometimes you have friends in the workplace, and you can see that your friend is being indecent towards a female colleague. But sometimes you don't say anything because your loyalty lies with this friend, and that works against women. That's all I can say in that. There really isn't much to say there. Don't interrupt. Also, there's really not much to say here. Just don't do it. This has got nothing to do with just women. It's just across the board, right? Like, just don't interrupt. In meetings, seeing one person as inferior to yourself and then interrupting them because you think they are wrong, it's just rude. Just don't do it. It's unbecoming of an ally. And you are forcing someone to go back into a show when they're actually starting to come out. Speak up. Speak up against any injustice that you might see that is working against women. Because your silence sometimes comes across as if you are actually agreeing with what's happening. And sometimes, I always bring this up because I'm African, but you see, when you're coming from an African background, a male voice is always respected. And this is reality. It is always respected more than the female voice. So when you speak up and you stand with us, it gives it more weight, especially to your male colleagues, to your male counterparts. So just to recap, we need to bring balance. Are women achieving what they are meant to be achieving? We need to incubate. Do they know what to do with their innovative ideas? We need to reward, give credit where it's due. We can't be snatching ideas from each other. Collaborate. I'm a movement by myself, but I'm a force when we are together. Less statistics. More success stories and less negative statistics. I understand the statistics are important to make headway, but more success stories are going to get us the results. And men matter. Work with us, stand with us, and for us. Thank you. Do we have any questions?